Welcome back to Woodcrafter's Corner, where we talk about all things woodcrafting, but not a ton about corners. In today's video, we're going to be addressing a very basic but often overlooked question for the would-be carver or whittler, and that is simply, how do you go from a giant piece of wood like this to a smaller piece of wood that's a little bit cut out and easier to whittle? A lot of the beginner basic books and even videos will start you out at this, but not really describe how to start out from here and get to here. There's this in-between part that's mysterious and unknown. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Stick around. There's a few methods you can use, and it's going to drastically cut down on the time you spend whittling, especially when you have a bigger block like this. So let's get right to it.
Alright, so the first step is to outline your pattern. Now, of course, you can just draw this on the piece of wood if you want, but a lot of the times I'll use a piece of carbon paper like you see here, and then maybe a printed off pattern, or maybe something I've sketched on a piece of paper. It's a lot easier, I find, to go back and edit as necessary. And so once you do that, I go over in some kind of red pen or just a different color that stands out so you know what you've covered already. One tip is to align the pattern with the corner of your blank so that you have to cut out less, so you can see the nose is really close to the edge here and the feet are at the bottom. And then you don't have to do this step, but I often will. It makes it a little bit easier when you come to cutting out, and that is to trace the front part of your pattern on the end, so that way you always know kind of where you're at in the carving as you go. But in order to just cut it out, you don't really need to do this step. And just like that, you're ready to move on to the next step. And for me, that is to use a simple handsaw to cut out a majority of what I need, or to divide up a larger blank into smaller ones, but you can use a table saw or a bandsaw. So the first and perhaps the most obvious method is to simply use a knife. And as you can see here, I'm using a relatively large knife. It's razor sharp to make this process a little bit quicker and easier. I believe this one is the Beavercraft roughing blade. And people have been doing this for thousands of years. All you got to do is whittle away until it's kind of where you want it to be. The only downside of this method is that it does take a while. It requires quite a bit of elbow grease. You'll need to sharpen your knife maybe on a strop occasionally during the process. And then of course, working with the grain and against the grain presents different challenges, so it can take a little bit of finesse to not only do quickly, but also to do without wrecking your carving, which unfortunately I've done occasionally. But the plus side of this is that it doesn't require any other equipment other than your whittling knife, and there's a certain elegance to taking it from a big chunk down to a more manageable size, and it's a little bit relaxing as well. So with that, I'll let you watch the sped up footage here, but feel free to skip ahead at any point. Method number 2 is quite a bit faster than the first, and that is a coping saw. This one's pretty popular. The only downside to it is that you will need probably a workbench and a clamp. But as you can see, not only is it faster, it allows you to get into those smaller areas like around the legs on this giraffe without breaking them off. And overall, it presents a really nice blank that you can just whittle down from there. The only downside to it is that if you want to use it to divide up larger blanks, it's almost impossible to keep it straight like you can with a handsaw. As you can see, this one's pretty crooked. Method number 3 goes back to a hand tool called the gouge, and with this one you probably will also need a knife, but to at least start, the gouge makes huge progress very quickly, especially if it's sharp, and as you can see here, I'm able to take out big chunks, whereas with the knife it goes a lot slower. The only downside to using a gouge is that it's not able to get into those finer details very well, so you probably still will need another tool with it. But if you have a blank that you're trying to cut out, or maybe you're trying to use a certain section of a branch or just a larger piece of wood overall, the gouge is a great way to go. You may have to sharpen it occasionally as you go, similar to a knife, but overall it's just fun to use. Now, just like with the knife, I'm going to show you the entire process that I've done using a gouge and knife to carve out a blank here. But again, feel free to jump ahead to the next chapter unless you want to watch the entire thing. It's kind of oddly satisfying, to be honest, but anyways, I'm done. And just like that, we're left with a cutout blank that you would almost never know was done only with hand tools. Now, method number 4 is probably the easiest way out of all the ones we'll discuss today. Not only is it fast, but just like a coping saw, you're able to get into those smaller details that you probably couldn't with any other hand tool. Now for this, I actually don't have a bandsaw. How I wish that I did. So I was able to recruit my father, and I was able to record him doing this. But as you can see, it's just a small motion to go around these very intricate details, and it just makes quick and easy work, which you can come back in and just carve with a knife however you want, but at least this handles all the heavy lifting. And just look what you're left with, a perfectly cut out blank with almost zero effort, except for the investment of the bandsaw.
So there you have it. It's not too hard once you are aware of the different methods. You'll find out which one works best for you, especially if you have a big workshop where you can have a bandsaw. I wish that I did. Or if you just have a few hand tools like a coping saw or even just a gouge. At the end of the day, as long as you start out with something like this, you're going to find your whittling time is a lot more enjoyable and a lot faster as well. And that means more projects for you. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps out a ton. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.